Hi, this is Anna London with Cyvergence. And in this episode, we're going to talk about what we know and then what we don't know about the Dali ship that hit the Francis Scott Key Bridge, right, which is a major trade route, right, in the I-95 corridor. Okay, so I lived in DC for quite some time. Was out there for 14, 15 years. I've expanded out here to Alaska, but I definitely lived there for decades. And I was also stationed at Fort Belvoir and, of course, and then Fort McNair, when I was in the service years ago. But with that said, right, so I'm definitely familiar with that area, I guess is my point. So there's a point of reference there, personal reference, okay? Having been there, having been on that bridge, having witnessed full hand, that is a main artery, right, for coming in and out, bound in that DMV area, the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, for people also coming and going to work, right, in the DC area where there's a lot of government agencies that a lot of us would support, right? So it affects jobs, it affects a variety of things in that corridor. So let's kind of, dissuade some myths here. So there were some things going around that said that the Dali's captain and crew, were Ukrainian, for instance. Well, they're not. So the Dali's captain and crew are Indian, okay? The Synergy Marine Corp, okay, the company that manages the ship, okay, had mentioned there's two pilots, okay? There were local specialists who helped guided the vessel's safety in and out of ports, okay, and navigating the Dali at the time of the collision. Both, though, are U.S. citizens, right, according to Synergy, right? So let's talk about, so they weren't Ukrainian, okay? So let's talk about kind of what happens, walk through the series of events here. So the collapse of, Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge on Tuesday, okay, after being struck by the Dali cargo ship, definitely has raised a ton of questions about who owns and manages the ship. How could this have even gotten that close? Why weren't there tugboats? Why wasn't with the power outage, right, that supposedly it, affected this ship? There's normally a manual option as a backup, right, with anything, okay? CISA initially had come out and said it could be a cyber attack and all that. We don't know any of that stuff yet, okay? We need to do an investigation. It's called instant response, digital forensics, right? Instant response, okay? So, there was a huge impact, okay, on one of the busiest ports in the U.S., okay? Only second to the East Coast, right, really? We're going to look at it that way. People don't realize, I think, how big of an impact this actually and exposes us to huge vulnerabilities in our critical infrastructure, right? So the Dali, right, is essentially a 948-foot vessel, okay, that hit the bridge, okay? A massive ship, okay? It's a Singapore-based company, right, that owns it, that has over 660 ships under management around the world, okay? The ship was operated by a charter vessel company, right, Synergy Group, and then chartered by the Danish shipping giant Maersk at the time of the incident, right, the bridge incident, and it sent vehicles and people tumbling into the Patapsco River. Now, luckily, right, there were deaths. I'm hearing 6, I'm hearing 9, I'm hearing 3, right? So, let's find out when, the final numbers actually are revealed, right? Because I'm seeing different things from different news sources, right? And even speaking to people that live in the area, that I know, friends of mine, family, etc. So let's kind of find out what the investigation reveals first. So stop jumping into conclusions. And the White House shouldn't have come on and said, well, it wasn't a terrorist attack. How do they know it wasn't, right? You haven't done the investigation yet, okay? So it just, again, it's deceiving, okay? Because we need to allow a full-on investigation to be conducted, okay? From the experts, okay, and then allow then to be briefed, brief the public with whatever's allowed to be briefed, right? Because again, some of this stuff could end up being classified, right? Because especially if it affects national security risk, right? So, obviously all of our thoughts and prayers are with the families that were affected, right? And everyone in that area in which jobs and trade and all that are affected, right? The livelihoods over in that area. Okay. So it was confirmed, though, that the Dali was carrying cargo for the Maersk customers. Okay. Supposedly, the company had no crew or personnel aboard the ship, which is quite odd because you would think you would still have people there in order to be able to maneuver the ship, right? And like a backup, right? It shouldn't be on autopilot, what have you, especially when it is now, in a high trafficked area, right? Look, the Dali, which can carry up to 10,000 20-foot equivalent units, okay, was carrying nearly 4,700 containers at the time of the collision. It was operated by a 22-person Indian crew. So then in one aspect, CBS says there were no personnel. And then here's another source, right, where it says there's a 22-person crew. So which was it, right? So already there's some discrepancies there in the details that are being revealed, right? And if you listen to social media, that's a quagmire of just garbage because everybody has their own opinions and this and that. And everybody wants to claim to be an expert. Well, nobody is, right? I'm sorry. Allow the actual experts to do their job and investigate, okay? And then, give them the time to do that. And then they can reveal what they can reveal to the public, right? Not everything is up for public consumption, especially when when there's a current investigation underway, right? So, initially it wasn't immediately clear what kind of cargo the ship was carrying. But, I can assure you that there were some hazardous, materials and what have you. So, there was a lot in there, all right? So supposedly, let's talk about why. So why did the Dali crash into Baltimore Bridge? Nobody really knows, okay? So, again, the collision is being investigated, okay? And including whether the systems on board lost electricity, which could have been related to the mechanical failure. But again, these U.S. officials are really not authorized to speak publicly. So again, there's going to be some of the stuff is going to be piecemealed, but allow the investigators to do their jobs, okay? So accidents at sea, okay, known as marine casualties, are not uncommon, but elisions, right? Elisions, which basically is when a moving object strikes a stationary one with catastrophic results, are far less common. Okay, so the investigation of the power loss aboard the Dali ship, this Singapore flagged vessel, is definitely going to be a high priority, right, as it should. And I'm not really pleased with the fact that President Biden already agreed that the taxpayer will pay for the repairs, when in fact, just like with anything, right, if I'm in a vehicle, okay, and I'm insured, which that vessel should be insured, foreign or not, okay, if I hit another vehicle and I'm found to be at fault, then, I have to pay for the damages. And if I have insurance, the insurance is going to pay for the damages, right? That's the point of this. So if, in fact, the Singaporean vessel is found to be at fault, right, which it is, okay, let's just be real, it is. An accident's an accident, but still, it's still a fault, whether or not it was malicious intent or not, okay, the damage is there, right? Just like if I'm in a home and I accidentally, break a coffee table or damage a chair or something like that, right? I mean, I would have to pay for it, right? So that's just the main principle of the thing, okay? So, numerous cargo and cruise ships have lost power over the years. So the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea requires that all international vessels have 2 independent sources of electricity. 2, okay? Both of which should be able to maintain the ship's seaworthiness on their own, okay? According to a safety study about power failures on ships, okay? And citing the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, okay, is where I'm getting this information from. Okay, the Dali's emergency generator was likely responsible for the lights coming back on and off in the initial blackout, but there was still some steerage left when they initially lost the power. So, they've been told that the ship never recovered propulsion, and the emergency generator is a diesel itself. So if you light off the generator, that's all going to be, put off a puff of exhaust, is what you pretty much saw potentially the black puff of smoke that came out right before it hit, the bridge, so that's probably what that was from. But again, I'm not a ship expert either. So what I'm doing is I'm looking from authoritative sources, which you should be doing the same. But don't jump to conclusions until the investigation has concluded, right? Under maritime law, okay, all foreign flag vessels, which this was one, must be piloted into state ports by a state licensed pilot. So the Dali's licensed pilot is licensed by the Association of Maryland Pilots, okay? There is a licensed pilot, okay, aboard the ship, okay, and, the Association of Maryland Pilots, basically, there's a group that represents all other state piloting agencies in the U.S., right? So this is just like with anything, regulations, right? The pilot supposedly was directing navigation of the ship as it happened, okay? He allegedly asked the captain to get the engines back online, and they weren't able to do that. So the pilot took all the action he could, okay? He tried to steer, okay, according to what they know now, or what they think they know now, to keep the ship in the channel, and he also dropped the ship's anchor to slow the ship and guide the direction. But neither was enough, and the ship never did regain its engine power. So how big is the ship? Okay, so like I said before, it's 980 foot, okay, container vessel. It was built in 2015 by Hyundai Heavy Industries in South Korea. And with a cruising speed of about 22 knots, that's roughly 25 miles per hour, it has traveled the world carrying goods from port to port. The ship was constructed of high-strength steel and has one engine and one propeller, okay, according to marinetraffic.com. The Dali arrived in Baltimore on Sunday from the port of Norfolk in Virginia, and before that, it had been in New York and came to the Panama Canal. Okay, so who owns and operates the Dali, right? So it's owned by the Singapore-based Grace Ocean, Limited, but managed by Synergy Marine Group, also based in Singapore, and it was carrying Maersk, customers' cargo, according to a statement from the shipping company. Okay. So I know say they're concerned and they're monitoring the situation. Of course they are. But again, let's let the investigation conclude, right, before we jump to conclusions. Now we all have some hypotheses and some theories. But, Synergy, which describes itself as a leading ship manager with more than 600 vessels under its guidance, issued a statement on its website acknowledging the incident and reporting no injuries among its crew and no pollution in the water. Okay. There were 2 pilots on board. All right, and 22 crew members in all, according to Synergy, and all of them from India, okay? So, there's a lot involved in this, okay? And again, I don't think we should take this lightly by any means, by any means, because, again, anything can happen, but let's talk about some other aspects of where trade routes have been affected, right? So, you have to kind of look at kind of what's going on, like the bigger picture, I think sometimes, right? And, sometimes it's not as it seems, but sometimes when you kind of have to look through the smoke to identify the kind of what's really going on, right? So let's talk about another vessel that got blocked the Suez Canal. It was a 2021 Suez Canal obstruction. In March 2021, the Suez Canal was blocked for 6 days by the Ever Given, a container ship that had run aground in the canal. And the 400-meter long, okay, that's 1,300 feet for those of us Americans, 224,000-ton, okay, 20,000 TEU vessel was buffeted by strong winds, okay, and ended up wedged in the waterway, okay? So, it was blocked all traffic until it could be freed, right? It blocked the waterway with its bow and stern stuck in the opposite canal banks, blocking all traffic. So how does that even work? I mean, it's kind of odd, right, that all these things are just happening within the last few years or so. Like look what's going on with our planes, our transportation, right, and all that. I think is it a misgiving of the vendor itself that's just taking shortcuts and safety, because the Dali ship, for instance, shouldn't have even been, because it had previous accidents, right? It had previous accidents. So, but let's talk about other trade routes right now that are being affected, right? So because remember the rerouting some of the Israeli-linked ships, right? And the concern about the increased Houthi attacks, okay? And much wider economic repercussions that could unfold, okay? If the Houthi continue their anti-shipping activity, right? Indefinitely. And of course, it's continuing to escalate, right? So the Houthi attacks on commercial vessels in the Red Sea, particularly those with Israeli links, have led some companies to reroute their ships away from the Suez Canal and the strategic Bab al-Mandab choke point, if I'm saying that correctly, right? And such vessels have been observed taking the longer route around the Cape of Good Hope to reach Europe and Asia, increasing their transit time and, of course, logistics cost, right? Which means it trickles down because any products or anything that's being, carried, right, is going to have, it's a higher cost for logistics, which means those costs are going to be passed down to the consumer, right? So although attacks emanated from the Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen have been contained somewhat, the risk of major disruption of global trade remains high, okay? Because as long as commercial ships operate by various nationalities are being targeted, then yes, the risk is high, okay? And there's been attacks before and since the Gaza war. So the threat to local maritime security has been growing over the past few years anyways, even before the war. It's just that the Hamas-Israel war has magnified it. Okay, because previously the Houthis targeted ships linked to countries involved in the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen, right? And in 2018, right, they set their sights on crude oil tankers belonging to Bahri, which is Saudi Arabia's national shipping carrier, attacking the vessels as they sailed through the Bab al-Mandab Strait, either en route to or returning from the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. Okay, so in response to that, the Saudi energy ministry suspended oil shipments through that choke point for around 12 days, apparently not long enough, though, to make the shippers pursue alternate routes. Okay, so although they might do so in a lengthier disruption. And the current wave of attacks is more focused on ships with Israeli links, right? But even this phenomenon is, of course, not new because between 2021 and early 2023, drone attacks blamed on Iran targeted a few ships connected to Israeli entities, including in the Arabian Sea near, Oman. So the Gaza war has taken several threats to a higher level. However, the Houthis employing new methods to target commercial vessels, right, is basically expanded, right? So, and, they're weaponizing it. They're weaponizing our trade routes. They're weaponizing, taking down, economies, right? Especially within the West, right? So there was a terror attack in Russia recently, right? That had nothing to do with trade, but it was definitely a terror attack. And so, who was involved? ISIS, of course, took responsibility for it. But it's kind of odd that a few days later, right, this attack is here. So I think this is a concentrated, planned attack, okay? Because it's just too, we can't be that wide open. Come on, even since 9/11, we locked things down, right, for the most part. But we're noticed there's a lot of holes and gaps in our critical infrastructure, okay? And in the cyber realm, right, because there's logical and then physical security, avenues of attack, potential attack, right, vectors. And so my job is the cyber component, right? But there's physical and logical. And this is definitely, I think, a combination of both. And then how do they even know, right, where to even hit that bridge to take it down to do the most damage? And if you watch the video, when the ship hit, there was also in the below part of the ship, it looked like it could have been, an explosion also as well. Because you just hitting it's not going to take it down. So something else happened, right? So I don't know. There was a few things that are just suspect for me. It's just the common sense approach, right? But again, I'm not the one investigating it. Okay, again, this is my theory or hypotheses, right? But it just kind of all follows through. If you look at what's going on globally, at the larger picture, right? Our trade routes are being affected, right? So, it is definitely concerning across the world. And it's not just affecting America. It's affecting Israel. It's affecting, a variety of our Western partnerships and allies, right? So it's definitely something to take note of. Okay, that's for sure. Yeah, it's definitely concerning. Okay, definitely concerning. So then what do we do about it? What do we do about it, right? So okay, let's go back to though the Baltimore ship, the vessel, and actually what it contains. Okay, what it actually contained on there, because that ship that smashed into the Baltimore Bridge has 56 hazmat containers. Okay. Now, the Coast Guard is saying right now no leak has been found, but that could change, right? That could change. So, the Dali, of course, that collapsed the Baltimore structure, was carrying 56 containers of hazardous materials, okay? It was more than 1 million gallons of fuel at the time that it hit the bridge, okay? Again, no obvious signs of fuel leaks or, according to right now, no danger to the public. And the Coast Guard did move quite quickly aboard the vessel to inspect the cargo, right? So, hopefully, like I said, this stands true to that no further damage or no further leaks are identified, right? Because that's the initial preliminary review, but there's a lot of containers. So how can they, inspect them that quickly, honestly? So, supposedly it's not leaking any fluids into the river, okay? So, but again, efforts are underway to plan how the bridge will be disentangled from the Dali so the ship can be removed. And the vessel bow is sitting on the bottom because of the weight of that bridge debris on it, right? So the vessel is stable, but it has over 1.5 million gallons of fuel, oil, and lube oil on board, right? So is there a threat to the public from the Dali and its cargo? Well, already it's exposed the threat of taking down the bridge, a major trade route, right? And like I said, a work route, right, for people to travel in and outside of the DC area, right, for work, okay? That the I-95 corridor, especially that bridge, is a major transportation point for people coming in and out of the area, again, and for trade, right? So, according to, of course, the White House right now, and of course the Coast Guard, there's no threat to the public, okay, from the hazardous materials on board thus far, okay? And they've obtained the vessel manifest that container of ships, that carried, and has done an initial analysis of the types of hazmats that are on board on this vessel. Okay, so, a specialized Coast Guard hazmat team on board with air monitoring equipment hasn't detected anything coming from the containers yet, okay? But they have not determined, okay, if there's any kind of release from the cargo, at least at the moment, okay? No flooding or damage underneath the waterline to the vessels thus far. Okay, and of course, underwater surveys are being conducted to basically remotely operated vehicles and divers to inspect for any potential damage. Okay, they're looking for everything, but again, it's a huge. If you look at it's football fields in length, so that's the preliminary review. That doesn't mean that any further damage or leaks will, be revealed, right? Also, that's the initial review. So, 4,700 cargo containers were on board. 2 are missing overboard, though. Okay, but neither contain hazardous materials of those, supposedly. Whatever's on the manifest. 56 contain hazardous materials. 13 or so containers on the bow of the ship were damaged in the collapse, but none of those contain hazardous materials of those 13. The majority of its contents, right, in containers are closer to the pilot house and are completely unaffected by the damage to the bow of the ship. Most of the hazardous materials in the shipping containers were things like mineral oils, and even though they're hazardous, they've determined there really isn't kind of threat to the public, right? So they say initially. I just think they're trying not to scare people. So who's then overseeing any environmental investigation and cleanup, right? So, several agencies are on the scene and they are collaborating together, okay? And that's in accordance with the Jay Apperson, the Deputy Director of Communications for the Maryland Department of the Environment. And the EPA, right, the Environmental Protection Agency, has a couple of people on scene who are technical experts and part of a federal emergency response team to provide assistance with any shipping containers if needed, right? So Maryland state officials are also conducting water sampling upriver and downriver on the site in a coordination with other federal officials. Look, cargo manifests are critical, and hopefully they're being honest about it because, there's been a lot of human trafficking, there's been a lot of this, a lot of that. So, what else is on that ship, as well? So the cargo manifest that the Coast Guard used to review the cargo and containers on the Dali is required by federal law, right? The rules are particularly meticulous for hazardous materials, okay? But there's an extremely rigorous vetting of the cargo before it's even accepted for shipping. Okay, a customer shipping cargo has to submit a materials safety data sheet, right? An MSDS that details the product emergency protocols and who gets notified if something happens. But not every ship, okay, can take every class of hazardous material either. So the shipping owner has to individually approve each cargo container, and that's very rigorous and time consuming. So I don't know that they're doing it at the level they need to, right? Because as it's loaded onto the vessel, there needs to be a vetting, right? Where it's at, what it is, etc. And mistakes or misstatements can cost companies a lot of money. There's big fines if you violate the stuff, and misdeclarations can get you big civil fines if you get caught, though. If you get caught, right? That's the thing, right? I don't, just like our food labels are not even honest, right? So what are we going to think that these shipping cargo containers are being honest? Let's be real, right? So what's going to happen with the salvage of the Dali, right? So the ship's operator has mobilized its marine salvage plan and its pollution response plan, okay? So the contracted salvage company is Resolve Marine Incorporated, and it's mobilizing resources to take the next steps as appropriate to refloat the vessel and remove it from the area, right? The critical thing, though, is that a piece of the bridge remains on the bow of the ship, okay? The Coast Guard will need to coordinate with the Army Corps of Engineers and contractors on removing the debris before the vessel can be moved itself. So that's, not a quick thing. That's, going to be a few days, maybe a couple weeks, maybe even longer, And then let's talk about then how long it's going to take to rebuild that bridge. That's not a quick thing. That's going to take years. And then who's going to pay for it, right? I don't think we, the taxpayers, should have to pay for it. We didn't cause the damage, okay? Again, who's ever at fault, whether it be a company, a vendor, right, whatever, should pay for it. Again, like I said, if I get in a car accident, and I found at fault, I have to pay for the damages to include medical bills and everything. And so that should be the same for this company. They should have to pay for the repair of the ship, of the bridge and all of that, and any environmental cleanup that may be impacted, because we don't know yet. They say it's nothing leaked, but we don't know that yet. That's the initial preliminary review. And then also the families that were affected, right? The fatalities that occurred, okay? I'm hearing 3 and then 6 and then 9. I mean, which is it, okay? I was hearing initially that there were no crew on board. Then I was hearing there are crew on board, right? Or what have you. So again, to go to authoritative sources and, don't just look at one source for media. Also, I look at multiple. I look at left wing and right wing and middle wing, if you will. I look at everything because everyone has their biases. Everyone has their own truths. I look at fact. And then I go to authoritative sources as much as I can from a variety of sources, okay, to be more objective in my analysis and my review, right? And to ascertain really kind of what happened for myself based upon the facts that are being revealed, understanding that there's still a lot of unknowns right now. And, and to be honest, there's not going to be a lot of detail that's going to be, revealed to the public yet either, especially if it's a national security threat or whatever, which this is because it's impacting our critical infrastructure, let's be real, whether accidental or otherwise, right? A threat is a threat is a threat. It doesn't really even have to be malicious intent. It's an accident, right? So just like deleting data, right? It could be an accident. We need to have backups. But what I'm saying is that it's still a threat. It's still a risk to us, right? Whether it be accidental or malicious intent, whether it be an insider threat, external threat, foreign threat, etc., right? So, okay, let's talk. We don't know why, but we do know what happened. So how can we prevent it in the future? This should have never happened in the first place, though, which is beyond me. Okay, so. Especially in the DMV area, in the Baltimore area, where that's highly, there's eyes on. I mean, there's cameras everywhere. There's, We've got multiple types of police out there, you know, Secret Service and there's the Capitol Police and this police and that police. I mean, it's over policed, if you will. I mean, there's so many, is what I'm saying, departments out there. And then there's eyes on, there's a lot of helicopters and things that are always flying over, whether they be news or whatever. I'm surprised, though, that this wasn't seen earlier on, and then something wasn't done to kind of help this from even getting to the point it was. Again, but how did it know where to hit? That's the thing. It just happened to hit one of the major load-bearing, right, components of the bridge to take it down. So this, to me, honestly, personally, preliminarily, it seems orchestrated. It seems purposeful. And they're going to, of course, chalk it up like it's an accident. But it seems purposeful because there's just too many coincidences, right, that, to me, align with, a purposeful targeted attack, but made it look like it's like an accident, right? Oh, that's the thing, because obviously they're not going to try to start a war, if you will. They're going to try to do whatever they can to damage our economy, right? And how do you do it? That's one of them, okay? So, that it is a concern, and we need to stop being complacent as American people, because there are threats here. There's a lot of unvetted people here as well, right? That we have no idea who's here. And there's a lot of people, if you actually look at the CBP, the Border Patrol, right, and the DHS, right, numbers, there have been a lot of people that they have caught that are on the, terrorist watch list that have come across the border. But then again, there's a lot of people they haven't caught either. So who's here? I'm all for people coming here, but, we need to vet people so we know who's in our backyard, right? So that's all. And so we don't have those terrorist folks or people with just bad intent on the American people and on our infrastructure here. I mean, we already have enough to worry about as it is, right? So that's where I'm coming from. And there's no way they're vetting the people at the border. They're not, right? So there's a lot going on, and we're just so complacent. And I don't know, it just seems like you can't be that. It's almost like this ineptness is purposeful, because there's no way you can be that inept, that negligent of security, of our infrastructure, critical infrastructure. There's no way. And on one hand, you're saying, okay, let's approve a critical infrastructure bill, right? And then the other hand, you're just allowing everything to be open, which is our borders, which is our bridges, right? Our major ports of entry, our major trade routes, like this one in particular, right? Don't think just because it's Baltimore, it's not going to affect you. It will, because there's a lot of, not only the ships, but then also the trucks and all that. So that go in and out, up and down, like I said, the I-95 corridor, which is up down the East Coast, all the way from Maine, all the way to Florida, right, and all that. And then, of course, inland across, the country and all that, across like I-70 and then I-40 and all that. So, and I-10 and all that, the south there. So this has a huge risk, and I hope that everybody pays attention and takes this more seriously, and doesn't just chalk it up as, it's just, okay, but how do we prevent it? Because look at the train derailments. There were several of those, right? Several of those all around the same time, and it was just too coincidental. It was almost like it was purposeful, like targeted, right? There can't be that many accidents, give me real. And then the planes, right, with the planes. So, Boeing is actually normally very thorough, okay? So was it an insider threat, right? Somebody purposely did not bolt the side of the panel in as it should have been, right? Because they do maintenance checks and all that. Even when you board the plane, they do like the final checks, maintenance checks, all that. So, I mean, and it's not just one plane that was affected, it's several planes. So you kind of begs you to wonder, is somebody, internally, an insider threat causing this problem? Because again, what's it affecting? It's affecting our transportation routes. It's putting fear in the American people, right? It's also, causing a huge hit on our economy, right? So, how do you take over a country without firing a single shot? You affect the economy. You divide and conquer, divide us. We're all fighting, infighting, right? We're all been put in different bins of people. I mean, why? We're all Americans. We should be working together. Okay, but they have us distracted for that. And then what they are doing is affecting our economy, affecting our food sources, affecting our transportation sources, affecting our critical infrastructure, right? I wouldn't be surprised if the next thing is our electrical, right, grids, you know. So one thing after another, or even our hydroelectric power stuff like the Hoover Dam, right, taking those types of things out there. So, again, we cannot be complacent here. This is a very serious thing, very serious issue, and I'm not trying to incite fear, but what I'm trying to say is we need to be vigilant. And we need to hold our government officials to account because they're dereliction. It's dereliction of duty, honestly. It's like hiring a security guard, and the security guard goes asleep. Goes to sleep. You hire him just to stay to protect your business or protect, your house or whatever, and you're relying on them to be fully armed and of course protect your house, etc. And then they go to sleep, and then of course the home invader comes in. And all that, they steal or whatever, they take out the family or whatever. I'm just saying, same thing with the business, right? So, that's essentially what the government's doing, is they're actually sleeping on the job. And even with the Border Patrol agents, the government's not letting them do anything. Like, how can you, it's illegal. If you look at the United States Code, okay, it is illegal for people to enter the border, enter into a sovereign nation, okay, without being vetted, without going through the proper channels, right? Requesting a visa, all that. Like when I travel to Alaska, for instance, Alaska, although it's part of the United States, it's not part of the continuous United States, if you will, because you have to go through from the lower 48, enter into Canada, and then, of course, then go into Alaska. But I had to get, even like a visa. I had to have my passport. I have all that to even travel through, so I had to be vetted. So how is that different then? Anybody coming in here, if I were to go to another country, it'd be the same thing. They'd want to know who's in their country. So it's not being xenophobic or anything like that at all. It's vetting people. I mean, we would have to, Saudi Arabia, if I was to go to Saudi Arabia right now, it'd be the same thing. They'd vet me. They'd look at who I was. Same thing in Iran, same thing in Israel, same thing in the UK, same thing in Nigeria, same thing, whatever, You can't just go there and then you just, you need to provide documents. Like, who are you? Why are you here? What's your purpose? Business or pleasure, number one, you know what I mean? And all that. So they know who's in their country. And then you're not supposed to be overstaying your visa, right? If you're there for a weekend or a week or whatever, vacation, then they expect you to be on the plane on the way out, right? So in a week or so, and if you're going to extend, they need to put a request to extend, right? So that you're legal there. So again, how then are we ignoring that for people coming into our country, right? So and it's weird because, all this money, right, which is really taxpayer money, is not going to our United States citizens that really need it, right? There's a lot of poor folks, a lot of people that can really use it. People sleep on the streets, even veterans, right? My fellow vets, right? Sleeping on the streets. And there's no money going to them, but money comes to somebody that has not served a day in the service, not even gone to work to even provide, to offer taxes. Because what you don't realize is that we're essentially paying for it. It's coming out of your pocket. It's not coming from the government. The government really doesn't have any money. The government is using our money. It's like they're laundering our money. It's our money, okay? Because the only way they can even have money to spend, right? Because it doesn't magically appear, even though they print more stuff, okay? But my point is that it comes from our tax dollars, okay? So you're essentially paying for the stuff. So don't you want to see this directed in the area that you want it to be directed to, right? Like to U.S. citizens that have actually been paying into that, elderly folks that need additional care, all these things, right? So families, childcare, all these things, right? To help people that, are U.S. citizens, right, first, in underserved communities and stuff first, all right? And of course, because if we can't help ourselves first, we don't even have money to help other people right now. We're like so bankrupt. We're so in a deficit, right? We're like huge debt, okay? And they act like money just grows on trees. I mean, at which point it's going to affects hospitals. It affects, our education, because instead of having 20 kids now in a classroom, which was already at too many, now we're going to have 50 and 60, right? So yeah, it just affects a lot, folks. I don't think everybody realizes the impact that it's all happening. Like it's all almost like an orchestrated, like planned chaos. There's no way that this can all be coincidental. I'm sorry. It's just not. I mean, if you sit back and just think about it objectively and think about it, if you were to try to take over a country or, direct harm on the people that live there, what would you do? Okay, other than coming in with missiles and stuff. But what would you do? Right? What would you do? What strategically could you do to take down a country? And a lot of people, unfortunately, want to see the U.S. like no longer exist. Okay, so a lot of these people that are entering here are not entering to actually provide any type of support or help the U.S. thrive. No. They're in it for a free handout. Many of them, in fact, they brag about it, right? Like the Venezuelan gentleman that was taken off of TikTok because he was bragging about the squatters' rights and what you can do and all these things or whatever. So, he was even talking about how you can get away with not working, right, and getting money, right? And he was using his child, right, as a prop, basically. So I'm not saying everyone's doing that. I'm saying, but, that's one person, yes, but there are millions that have come across. And so, I guarantee you, there's a lot of other people that have that same mindset, unfortunately. So, why not then redirect the funds then to our U.S. citizens that have been here and that could really use it, right? There's been a lot of money going into politicians' hands, but none of it really trickles down to the communities or the districts that they represent. Let's be real. And so you need to hold hold our government accountable, right? Yeah, it's just kind of scary. But anyways, going back to the Baltimore, attack. Basically, I'm gonna call it an attack because there's no way, even if it's accidental, it could have been prevented. Is my point. I mean, that ship already had been, in multiple accidents even before this one, anyways. So it already knew that it had steering problems and all these things, and there's already been some issues. So knowing that, the ship should have never even been on the water until it had been fixed, right? And there should have been escorts, like tugboats and other things, escorting this cargo ship. There's no way it should have gotten that close to being able to take out a major load-bearing component of one of our bridges that affects our major trade, right? It's a major thoroughfare, folks. I don't think you guys really understand or can fathom the impact that this has. And this bridge is so massive. It looks small, okay? And it looks small, right, when you're looking at like a video or whatever, but it's not. It's massive. It's long and it's massive, okay? So this is not something that can just be erected real quick, within a year or so. It's going to take a few years to rebuild it, right? But then what funds should it come out of, right? Should it come up under our taxpayers? We didn't cause it. The Singaporean company caused it, right? So they should be held accountable and have to pay. Again, whether it's accidental or purposeful or not, they should have to pay for it, right? And then we should be putting additional provisions around so that this doesn't happen again, not only to here, but anywhere else in our country, okay? Or even with our allies, right? So, because what affects them affects us and vice versa. But if you notice, a lot of our trade routes are being affected, So the Houthis in the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, okay, which I don't know why we gave up, okay, and then, here, our southern border, even our northern border. I mean, let's be real, that's not exactly safe either, okay. So, I mean, Canada vets us going in there. So, but if, and even Mexico, if I was to actually travel to Mexico, no joke, like if I was to say, let's take a plane into Mexico City, which I've been, they're going to look at my passport. They're going to look at all these. They're going to vet me. Same thing if I travel down there through the border. They're going to see who's coming in their border. So why can't we do the same thing here? Why aren't we allowed to do the same thing here? It's not being xenophobic or anything like that at all, actually. It's just being, we have a responsibility to protect our United States citizens, right? And any other person that's here, right, that's living here, deserves, protection or whatever is all I'm trying to say. And, unfortunately, there's a lot of trafficking and a lot of things going on too, because again, if you can't vet anybody, you don't know who's coming here. You don't know what's going on. You don't know anything. So it's not safe. And you can't say that we're safe or say it's a low risk because it's a high risk. And I think collectively, all these different things all together, right, affecting, our trade routes, the ship attack, the Houthi issue, right, in the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, right, our southern and northern border, right, all these things, one after another, after another, right, are having an impact on our economy, right, on our ability to do business with each other and of course with other foreign entities, right? But we shouldn't be that open. I'm just surprised because I thought we shored everything up after 9/11, right? We were already sleeping then. That's why they call it woke up a sleeping giant. So, and I know a lot of people say it could be planned attack, could be not, or whatever. I don't want to get into that one right now. But all I'm trying to say is, regardless, we should have known, okay, we should have protected it. And we should have protected our American people and our infrastructure, right? And obviously, we haven't learned anything from past mistakes because they keep repeating themselves, right? And I don't want the White House to sit here and just, brush this off as, oh, it's just an accident. It's just this. No. This should have never happened in the first place. That's the point. Okay, a lot of these things could be prevented. Whether this was an accident or purposeful or not, this could have been prevented. Okay? So, they're really being derelict. It's dereliction of duty. It really is. It really is. And there's a U.S. law already that actually cover it. Okay? And we do have a critical infrastructure bill that it was like Clinton signed back in the day. The Homeland Security presidential directives, right? So this nothing new. It's just they need to enforce it. So I just don't buy it. I don't buy this thing. Well, I don't know, and this and that. No. They know. They know exactly what's going on. Okay, they do. So either this is purposefully done. Okay, or like I said, if they're sleeping on their jobs and it's dereliction of duty regardless. These people should be removed from their seats, held accountable, fined themselves, jailed, etc. Right? Because then they're culpable. They're culpable, right, with this stuff. Allowing to happen or not make sure the security provisions are there in order to protect our infrastructure. This was critical infrastructure, you guys. I hope you realize that. So, and whether or not it was a cyber attack or not, there were still people though on board though that they could have maneuvered the ship, taken over manual. Right, and maneuver the ship out of it. So, looks like they may or may not have tried, but they could have been paid off too. I mean, again, let's let the investigation complete. Let's see what the outcome is and all that. I don't know. For me, like I said, I don't know because I'm prior military. I'm also cybersecurity, right? So I always look at risk. We're doing risk. We always do risk assessments. Security impact assessments. All these things. We try to preempt and be proactive, right, to avoid the cyber attacks. But then also, if there is an incident, right, the chronology of events, right, what led to it, right. But then you do an after action review, right, too. So you do the triage, the cleanup, et cetera, and then you do the after action review. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? What could we do different, right, and all that as well. So, but you want to minimize those incidents. In fact, you want to prevent them from happening at all. That's my point. And this definitely, the provisions were there. It's just that somebody is sleeping on the job. Somebody's got to be sleeping on the job. There's no way that this should have even happened. This is 2024. We've got the technology. We've got, all the surveillance, machinery, drones, and all that are in that area. I know because I was there. Shoot, if I drive and the easy pass will snap me up real fast, right? So I mean, there's everything there is my point, and so there's no way that this would have been. Either the threat was there and it was ignored, right? Somebody was paid to let it happen, maybe, I don't know. Or people are just derelict. It's dereliction of duty. They're complacent and they're negligent, for failure to act, appropriately or failure to shore up our defenses around our security infrastructure. This should have never happened because what's gonna then prevent another ship from doing this again then? Okay, so rebuild the ship. So, again, you do the same stuff over and over again and you can't expect different results. So then what provisions then are we going to put in place then, right, for even the new bridge that's being stood up, to prevent this from happening again, right? The laws and everything are there, okay? They just need to be implemented and enforced, okay, folks? That's the thing. No additional bills or anything need to be drafted, okay? We already have the laws in place, okay? They just need to be enforced. Okay, that's the thing. All right, so with that said, this is Anna London. I just need to talk about because it bothers me. It really does. I mean, it really does. I just cannot believe that this is even happening, that this even happened. This is America. I mean, we're, land of the free, home of the brave, but we're also, we're technologically advanced. And in that area, I know there's surveillance. There's intel. I mean, there's NSA, there's CIA, there's Department of State. I mean, in that area is my point, between the Baltimore and, of course, the DMV, the DC, Maryland, and Virginia corridor area. And so I know it's there because I used to live there, support government agencies, all that kind of stuff. My business, I have a business presence there, as well as I now have a business presence here in Alaska. But it just kind of really rubs me the wrong way because, again, this could have been prevented. And also the deaths that happened, whether it's 3, 6, or 9, there shouldn't have been any deaths. Okay. So, my heart and prayers go out to the families impacted of the fatalities, right, that occurred due to this attack. We, the taxpayer, honestly, bottom line up front, should not be paying for this at all. This was an egregious, whether it be accidental or not. Okay. It was egregious. Okay. On behalf of the vendor, right, that operates the ship, and they should be the ones, being held accountable and paying for it, right? So that needs to be enforced. We should not be paying for it as the American taxpayer. We didn't cause it, so why should it come from us? Why should we pay for the damages, right? Makes no sense. All right. Anyways, I hope this was of value to you. Let's all, though, let the investigation complete, though. Okay, I know some of us are kind of jumping to conclusions. I'm just kind of doing some preemptive analyses myself based upon what's coming out. But we all don't have all the details either and all the facts. We're only getting them piecemealed, if you will. But look to more authoritative sources, multiple sources, not just, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or independent. Look at all the sources because there's shards of truth, right, in each of these. Some of them are just downright propaganda. Okay, so, again, but look at authoritative sources for your information and so that you can develop your own and deduce really kind of from your own perspective based upon fact. Okay, because everybody has their own truth. Everybody has their own opinions upon what happened. Lord knows I do too. Okay, but again, we need to let the experts, conduct their investigation, and then, it's not going to be overnight. Okay. Even though we'll get daily updates, but understand that those daily updates will evolve, right, and change as, information that's revealed changes, right? So anyways, with that said, this is Anna London with Divergence. I hope this was helpful. Let's work together to identify risk, to remediate risk, report anything that you see, right? Don't just ignore it, okay? Because a lot of this stuff probably could have been prevented if somebody would have said something anyways. It's probably chatter or talk or whatever, especially if this was a targeted attack. Somebody knew something, okay? So remember this, effect, and whether or not you hate America or not, there's a lot of this anti-American rhetoric. Look, I mean, would you want to go somewhere else and that's worse? I've been to a lot of other countries, okay? I've been deployed to other countries, I've been stationed in other countries. And I can tell you, we are broken here in the United States. Yes, we are. We're not perfect, 100%. Okay, but we are actually better off with our rights and privileges and liberties than other countries are. Let's be real. Okay, so, I think sometimes you might need to go to another country and not stay in a 5-star hotel either. Like go live amongst the people, the economy, right? And live there for longer than a weekend or a week, right? Actually live there, submerge yourself in the culture, and you'll realize that we do have it better off here. So do you want that ruined, honestly? Do you want that ruined? Because, okay, we blame an oppressor, but all that's going to happen is there's going to be another oppressor that's come in. It's worse, actually. So, it's like that in every other country. You either have a dictator, right? It sucks. We humans are horrible to each other. So, but there's always somebody in charge, okay? There's always somebody in charge. There's always, again, an oppressor, if you will. It just depends on who the oppressor is. Like if you live in an authoritarian society, right? Or whatever, is it your government? We definitely don't want the government smothering us, right? Out of our liberties and all that, right? So again, it depends on who we and trust and, vote in. But again, those people, like if you are voting in congressmen and women, honestly, because that's dealing with legislation, that's law, they should be adept in the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so they should know that inside and out, our rights, right? They should also be lawyers, okay? Because when you're writing law, you should have a law background, a law degree, okay? So a lot of these people that are being elected to Congress have no clue, And then because they haven't studied the Constitution or whatever, they don't know. And so they'll pass a bill that actually takes our rights away, right? So, I mean, that's another thing to contend with. And then the President of the United States, the next President of the United States, honest to God, our next Commander-in-Chief should have served in the service. Because how are you going to actually, send sons and daughters, right, overseas to fight a war, any war, doesn't matter, right, without you also having served yourself, right? So I don't even think we should have another president that hasn't served in the United States military, okay? And furthermore, I believe that we should have a mandatory, 2-year enlistment for folks, right? A lot of other countries do that too. And it's not just so that we have a bunch of war fighters. It's not even like that. You'd be amazed at how much you learn and how much you appreciate because you get to go see other countries. You get to go, be amongst other cultures and other cultures, even within our American military, right, culture. So I get to meet a lot of people and foreign and otherwise, an experience that I just is unequal to anything I've ever experienced, and, it helps you, like when I was stationed in South Korea, stationed in Germany, Afghanistan, right, all over the place, right, traveled all over the place. So, beyond the five-star hotel, situation, but actually be able to stay there, talk to the people, live on the economy, if you will, right, submerge myself in the food, the culture, not just where, they cater to the tourists, the U.S. tourists, let's be real, completely different experience, right? So I implore you to actually go outside of the United States, go outside your state, your city, okay? A lot of people haven't even left their state, or if it's in the state, they've left maybe from New York to Miami or something or whatever, or to LA or something like that. No, get out of the United States, okay, and go experience other countries, okay? And you'd be surprised, right, at what you find out, and you'll come back better for it because then you'll appreciate what we have here. I didn't appreciate either when I was in high school because, they have you do look up, current events, right, whatever. And a lot of us in high school or even middle school, it's like, yeah. We don't really care what happens in other places, right, because we're kids, right? But the minute I joined the service and I went elsewhere, then I definitely started taking more note because what happens elsewhere does impact us, believe it or not, okay, in a variety of capacities. Right, and we're all connected, on the digital information, global information grid. Also. So let's just say a cyber attack in Nigeria, a cyber attack in the UK, a cyber attack in Algeria, right, or the country of Georgia, can all have a very quick, negative impact here within milliseconds because we're all part of the global information grid. We're all digitally connected on the internet too, so you have that to contend with, right? So let's not sleep, okay, on the watch. Let's band together as American citizens and with our allies, right, so that we can, be vigilant and, work together, not only to improve our nation, right, but then also prevent, things like the Baltimore attack from happening, right, where it's going to impact people's jobs, livelihoods. It is, let's be real. Because if people can't get into work, if they're allowed to do remote work, great. But a lot of people actually work like the classified stuff too, and that requires in person, right? Or other things that require in person, right? So a lot of people are going to lose their jobs because of this, believe it or not. So that's another thing to contend with. So this is going to increase the unemployment, right, for people, and that's not good, right? So it has a trickle down effect and a variety of, it's got an outward reaching effect beyond anything I think people can either understand or fathom right now with this attack. And okay, we have this attack. So let's say another one happens, then another one happens, another one happens, right? So all this stuff can be prevented though, okay, is all I'm trying to say. So as with that said, again, I try to provide fact, okay, not just opinion, even though I infuse some of my hypotheses or my theories based upon what I'm reading and based upon the facts that we have now. But again, you know, allow the experts to do their job in completing the investigation, and reveal the facts again as they come out, right? And then, of course, whatever the final outcome is, to make the final determination on whether or not this is an attack, or even if it's accidental, what happened, and then what can be done to prevent it. All these things, right? How can the ship be removed? I mean, how long is it going to take to rebuild the bridge? Who's going to even pay for the bridge? All these things, right? All these things will normally it's comes in piecemeal, and you get a lot of differences of data points, because a lot of people don't care about the fact. They just care about just getting whatever out there just for sensationalism and emotional, clicks, clickbait. I'm all about the facts, right? That's the way I roll. And so I take a minute to kind of digest it first, do some research before I open up my mouth, is my point. So anyways, enjoy, okay, the rest of your day. Spend time with your families, right? Do what you need to do. Live your dreams, right? Do everything. Life is short, right? Life is short. And, anything can happen at any time. And so enjoy at least what you have. Count your blessings that you have, right? And instead of complaining about everything, well, if you complain, then do something about it then. Do something about it, And I'm not talking about go after another another community or whatever, don't be victim blaming or, anything like that. Don't be doing that, blaming everybody for your problems. That's not my point. But if you understand what the root cause is, like do root cause analyses, and then work to fix it, work to move to fix it, work to align yourself with, people to fix it, right? Is all I'm trying to say, to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, right? And so collectively, we can improve upon what we have here in the United States and prevent any of these attacks or any of these accidental attacks from occurring again, right? All right, with that said, enjoy the rest of your day. Be careful, be vigilant, be safe. This is Anna London with Cyvergence signing out.